Today I'm going to talk about how to solve a simple proportion. Solving proportions is a pretty easy thing to do. It's basically the same as equivalent fractions. So an equation stating that two ratios are equal. So we know what ratios are, and if we know that a ratio is equal, is called a proportion. So for example, you can see that 10 times 2 equals 20, and 6 times 2 equals 12. So kind of that's what's happening to these fractions. And since these two fractions, or these two ratios, are equal, they are proportional. Okay? So if two ratios are equivalent, they are said to be proportional to each other, or in proportion. Some real easy examples of proportions. I mean, all you have to do when you're solving proportions, the problem is that there's not always an obvious answer about what you can multiply this number by to get this one. So because we can't solve all proportions that way, we like to learn things in ways that we can do it every time. And what works every time is, I always say, multiply the friends and divide by the lonely person. We cross multiply 3 times 40, and then we divide by 8. So 3 times 40 is 120. And then we do 120 divided by 8. Gives us 15. And that's our answer. So x equals 15 in this proportion. So all we do is cross multiply and divide. We multiply the friends and divide by the lonely person. So let's keep going. So this one's a little bit easier because you can see that 3 times 2 is 6. So 11 times 2 will be 22. But let's go ahead and solve it with the other method just so that we can make sure. 11 times 6 is 66 divided by 3 is 22. So B equals 22. So let's go ahead and talk about some word problems. So this one says, if Jennifer's DVDs take up 2 inches of space on her shelf, how much space will she need for 30 DVDs? What's important here is you've got 3 parts, and this is called a proportion box, and you guys are probably familiar with these if you're in my class, and if not, then you'll be familiar with them from this video. So this first part is what we call the word ratio, and this is where we answer the question, whoops, there shouldn't be an N on that word. This is where we answer the question, what is it that I'm comparing in this question, in this problem? And in this problem, when I read it, and we get that information from this last question. So it looks like we're comparing space, or inches, and DVDs. It's important that you have a good word ratio, because if you don't, the rest of this isn't going to make sense as to where the numbers go. So 5 of Jennifer's DVDs, so 5 goes with DVDs because that's describing DVDs. Take up 2 inches. 2 inches. 2 goes with inches. How much space will she need for 30 DVDs? Well, 30 is describing DVDs. So 30 goes here, and this is our unknown quantity that we represent with a variable, usually x. So now we're going to cross multiply. 2 times 30 is 60, divided by 5. Goes in 12 times, so x equals 12. So she'll need 12 inches of space for 30 DVDs. Next one, John filled his new radiator with 6 pints of coolant, which is the 10-inch mark. How many pints of coolant would be needed to fill the radiator to the 25-inch mark? So again, we're comparing pints this time, and again, we're using inches. So we know that 6 pints gave us 10 inches of the coolant. So we need to know how many pints will give us 25 inches of coolant. And notice that I'm keeping inches with inches down here on the bottom, and coolant with coolant up here on the top, or pints with pints. So now we're going to do 6 times 25. And that's not one that most of us can probably do in our heads, so we're going to write it down. And that's 12, 15, 150. Divided by 10. So x equals 15. So we need 15 pints of coolant to get to that 25-inch mark. Last one, Purple paint is made by mixing red paint with blue paint. The ratio of red to blue, so red to blue, remember ratios, the order matters. Red to blue is 5:2:3. So since the red comes first here and the 5 comes first here, we know we're comparing red and blue, and we know that red matches up with 5 and blue matches up with 3. How much blue paint should be used with 45 ounces of red paint? 45 ounces of red paint, so the 45 goes with red, then I put an X here. 3 times 45, it's going to be 15, and this is 12, 13, 135. Divided by the lonely person, which is 5. That goes in twice, minus 10 is 3, and that goes in 7 times, minus 35 is 0. So X equals 27. So we need 27 ounces of blue paint to mix with our 45 ounces of red paint in order to make our fancy purple paint. Hope this video helped you to understand proportions, and I'll be putting up some more videos shortly.